Hello and welcome back to PTMTR, where this week I was challenged to make Pastel De Nata. So we're gonna make Pastel De Nata, which starts with about 260 milliliters of whole milk in a saucepan with the rind of a quarter of a lemon. Peeling it with a potato peeler gives you a clean strip of zest without much of that bitter white pith. And you want to throw these into your milk on a medium heat, along with about a 2-inch stick of sweet cinnamon and a teaspoon of vanilla paste or extract. Now, whilst that's slowly infusing away, we're going to be making a thickener with exactly 1, 2 and 3 tablespoons of plain flour, along with a quarter cup or 63 milliliters of whole milk, whichever you prefer. Now, you want to whisk this together until the flour hydrates and you're left with this viscous but runny paste. Then just dump that straight into your now beautifully fragrant infused milk as it starts to thicken up into something more gloopy. In a separate saucepan, we're going to go in with 160 milliliters of cold water and 265 grams of plain sugar, bringing it to a boil. And as tempting as it may be, do not stir this. This is a simple syrup, and if you're going to start mixing it, the sugars will want to sort of recrystallize. So just let it do its thing. I'm using my temperature probe and not letting it get any higher than 105 degrees Celsius. So as soon as it does hit 105, take it off the heat. Then in a small and steady stream, you want to mix this into your infused milk. Mix it vigorously, but if you do see it split, don't worry, just keep whisking it on a gentle medium-low heat until you see it all combine. Now at this point, you want to remove all the aromatics and just let the mixture rest as we get started in the eggs. Now I've got these beautifully rich, large free-range eggs, which I'm then going to separate yolk from albumin. It's really simple, just gently crack the egg and prise it open, plain hot potato almost, with the yolk between the shells, and this will allow the whites to drop into a waiting bowl. Now I like to use the jagged shell to remove the little nerve from the yolks, sort of just scraping it away, and then just gently dropping this beautiful little gem into a separate bowl. Do this 6 times and whisk the yolk until they look super smooth and creamy. And remember, the deeper the color of the yolk, the better flavor and the healthier that yolk is. Anyway, top tip here, using a damp towel under your bowl to support it so it's not moving everywhere constantly while you're trying to whisk. You want to use this method to start tempering the yolks so you don't end up with a sweet scrambled egg. Drizzle the sugar syrup in slowly just so you bring up the temperature of the yolks gently. This way you're not shocking them into coagulation. And just keep going until you're left with a very velvety smooth mixture. Then you want to run this through a fine sieve so you're left with any sort of clumps of flour and aromatics, and then you can pretty much just store this for up to a week, but we're going to use it all now because ain't nobody waiting a week for these treats. Then you want to lightly flour down your surface and get to work on your puff pastry. Now this recipe would be a lot better if you did make the puff pastry from scratch, but I'm using store-bought pastry which I've left out at room temperature for an hour, just to allow it to become soft and pliable. Then you want to roll it out into a large sheet and then very tightly begin to roll the pastry up until you're left with a rope with like a million layers of pastry or something. Just trim off the ends and divvy up the dough into equal parts. I've gone for about 1-inch sized pellets of pastry, which then I'm going to drop into a buttered cupcake tray. Then either wet your fingers or use a bit of butter just to grease them down, but you want to push right into the center of the pellet and sort of work the dough to coat the mold. Gently manipulating it, trying to get it as thin as possible and as even as you can without tearing it. If you do need to remove any excess dough, you can. It will take a bit of practice, don't get me wrong, but you will get the hang of it all too quickly. Then just simply pour in your custard, leaving a bit of headspace. And this part is optional, but I'm hitting it with a blowtorch just to diffuse some of those bubbles that have settled on the top. Then just pop them into your preheated 220 degrees Celsius oven for about 15 minutes, or until you see the custard begin to brown and that pastry become beautifully flaky. Then turn off the oven and let it cool down a bit whilst it's in there, just to help the middle set a little. Now these are popularly and traditionally best served fresh and warm, with a dusting of sugar and cinnamon. So put some confection sugar and cinnamon powder in a fine mesh sieve and decorate them down with a delicious dusting of this stuff. Liberate them from the tray and serve up. An amazing buttery crispy shell with a gooey zesty custardy center. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Abu, for recommending this recipe. Don't forget to like, comment and of course subscribe. Message me on Instagram if you have any other challenges for me. Happy cooking.